Welcome to Everything Casual, bringing you original football casual videos from the golden era of the 80s and 90s, right up to current day. Football away day stories and historic clashes between football firms. Subscribe so you don't miss out. We upload videos every week.
Chapter 1. Ross McGill. For years, Ross McGill was known in Scottish football circles for one thing above all else: Rangers. From a young age, McGill immersed himself in the culture of Ibrox. He joined the Union Bears at just 14 years old, growing up inside the modern ultras movement at a time when supporter culture was becoming more organised, more militant and more influential than ever before. By his late teens and early 20s, McGill wasn't just another lad in the crowd. He was ambitious, vocal and deeply committed to the cause. Away days, European trips, confrontations with rival supporters, he embraced all of it. Over time, McGill rose through the ranks and became the lead capo of the Union Bears, effectively the public face and operational leader of the group on match days. This wasn't a ceremonial role. As lead capo, McGill controlled chanting sections, movement of supporters, liaison with club officials, discipline within the group. He was trusted by Rangers FC to an extraordinary degree. Sources later revealed McGill was granted unrestricted access to Ibrox, including areas off limits to ordinary supporters and in some cases even security staff. He was known to walk freely through restricted zones on match days and was treated as a representative of the ultras movement. Players respected him, managers knew him, club officials worked with him. Photos circulated online showing McGill standing beside Steven Gerrard and James Tavernier, smiling for the camera. In 2019, Tavernier publicly thanked McGill on social media after receiving an Ultras Player of the Year award. To the outside world, Ross McGill appeared to be a committed football supporter and community figure within the club's fan base. Behind the scenes, police were building a very different picture. A double life emerges. While McGill was building influence at Ibrox, intelligence sources say he was also cultivating connections far away from football. Travelling with the Ultras, particularly across Europe, gave McGill access to something valuable: networks. For decades, football hooligan groups have acted as informal meeting points for criminals, places where loyalty, silence and violence are normalised. McGill learned to lead men, command discipline and operate hierarchies long before he entered the criminal underworld in any meaningful way. At first, McGill attempted to go legitimate. He launched several business ventures, shops, takeaways, small enterprises, all of which ultimately failed. On paper, he looked like a young businessman trying to make his way. But after the EncroChat phone network was cracked in 2020, everything changed. EncroChat exposed hundreds of organised crime figures across Europe. In Scotland, it sent shockwaves through the underworld. Sources say McGill knew his name had surfaced. By 2022, he fled the UK. First Spain, then Dubai. The timing was no coincidence. The exit from Ibrox. In September 2021, McGill suddenly announced he was stepping down as Union Bears lead capo. The reaction from supporters was overwhelmingly positive. Fans praised his leadership, thanked him for years of dedication and wished him well. One supporter wrote, "He's built that group from nothing and led a tremendous singing section for years." Another added, "Capped off, sir. Replacement has big shoes to fill." What none of them knew was that McGill was already under serious police scrutiny. Former associates later said his departure, which appeared voluntary and amicable, now looks like a strategic withdrawal, a calculated move to reduce visibility as law enforcement closed in. Within months, McGill was gone from the UK entirely. Dubai and the birth of Tamo Junto. Dubai has become a familiar refuge for British crime figures. Extradition barriers, luxury anonymity, distance from UK law enforcement. From there, McGill didn't retire. He reorganised. Underworld sources say McGill formed a new criminal organisation known as Tamo Junto, often shortened to TMJ. The structure was familiar. TMJ operated less like a traditional Glasgow gang and more like a football firm. Cells of foot soldiers, clear hierarchy, loyalty over friendship, distance between leader and enforcers. One source told The Record, McGill runs TMJ like he ran the Union Bears. He commands loyalty, but he doesn't need to know his men personally. From Dubai, McGill forged international connections, including links to cartel-level suppliers according to police intelligence. He aligned himself with figures already established in Scotland's underworld, including associates of Jamie Iceman Stevenson. Among his alleged close contacts was Stephen Jimmy Jameson, Stevenson's former right-hand man. McGill had made the jump from supporter leader to international crime organiser. The cocaine rip-off and the war that followed. The current gang war is believed to have started over a £500,000 cocaine deal. McGill accused men linked to Edinburgh crime boss Mark Richardson of paying for the consignment with fake banknotes. In the underworld, that is unforgivable. What followed was not negotiation, it was punishment. In March, TMJ launched its first major attack, firebombing Belle Chevet, a high-end salon owned by Richardson's partner. Then the violence escalated. Homes linked to Richardson and his associates were targeted repeatedly. Petrol bombs, masked attackers, machetes. David McMillan, a close associate of Richardson, was attacked at his home after 2 previous firebomb attempts. Masked men with arms left him with a fractured skull and life-threatening injuries. Then McGill widened the war. He accused the Daniel family of siding with Richardson and ordered attacks against them as well, drawing in another of Glasgow's most feared clans. Businesses were torched, homes invaded, innocent people were injured, including a child and an elderly woman. From Dubai, McGill watched it all unfold. He was photographed in the Emirate beside a white Rolls-Royce, the image of a man who believed he had made it. Police Scotland launched Operation Portledge, making over 60 arrests. Several foot soldiers have since been jailed. McGill remains at large. Former Rangers Ultra.
Former Capo. Now one of the most talked about figures in Scotland's underworld. Ross McGill represents something new. A generation raised in football firm culture who learned leadership, loyalty and violence on the terraces, before exporting those skills into organised crime. Chapter 2. Lloyd Cross. Lloyd Cross always wanted to be seen. Among the Ranger support, and particularly within the Union Bears, Cross cultivated an image built on status, recognition and confrontation. He wasn't content to stand in the background. He positioned himself at the front, on the railings, leading chants, travelling to away games across Europe and actively seeking out trouble. Sources who knew him at the time described Cross as someone who thrived on visibility. In football firm culture, visibility equals reputation. Reputation equals influence. Cross styled himself as a top boy, a phrase borrowed directly from the language of organised crime. To him, the Union Bears weren't just a supporters group, they were an hierarchy, and he wanted to be at the top of it. Ultras, identity, and the need for status. The Union Bears are not a hooligan firm in the 1980s sense, but they operate within the same ecosystem. Territorial loyalty, confrontation with rivals, and a willingness to clash with police when tensions boil over. Cross embraced that culture fully. In August 2018, Rangers travelled to Maribor, Slovenia for a Europa League qualifier. What followed was one of the most notorious clashes involving Rangers supporters in recent years. Footage shows baton-wielding police charging into crowds of fans. Some supporters scatter, others stand their ground. Lloyd Cross was among them. Captured on camera, Cross is seen facing off with police during the disorder, an image that quickly circulated online. For some within the ultras scene, this cemented his credentials. For police, it placed him firmly on the radar. At the time, Cross was highly active on social media, regularly goading rival supporters, particularly Celtic fans. He enjoyed the attention. That visibility would later become his undoing. A foot in two worlds. While Cross was building a profile among Rangers ultras, he was also nurturing something far more serious. From a young age, he had connections to Jamie "Iceman" Stevenson, one of the most powerful and dangerous organised crime figures in Scotland. Stevenson was not a street dealer, he was an international operator, dealing directly with South American suppliers and coordinating large-scale importations. Cross became his trusted lieutenant. By 2020, Cross was deeply involved in a plot to import up to a ton of cocaine from Ecuador, hidden inside banana boxes and shipped to the UK. The estimated value of the drugs ranged from 76 million to 100 million pounds. This was not opportunistic crime, it was industrial-scale trafficking. Cross used his vehicle recovery company, LM Recovery, to help facilitate movement of drugs within the UK, a classic organised crime tactic, blending illegal activity with legitimate business operations. On paper, Cross looked like a young entrepreneur. In reality, he was operating at the very top tier of Scotland's drug trade. The mask slips. Those close to Cross say the transition from football lad to serious criminal was visible but poorly managed. Unlike more cautious figures, Cross continued to project wealth and success publicly. He drove a Porsche Cayenne. He maintained a flashy image. He made little effort to fade into the background. One Underworld source told the Daily Record, Cross was a blingy, flashy guy with a big mouth. Half of Glasgow knew he was connected to Stevenson because he'd known him most of his life. Eventually, someone had a word. Cross disappeared from social media. His public profile vanished. The ultras stopped seeing him at the front of the crowd. He was quietly sidelined within the Union Bears as his gangland connections became impossible to ignore. For both the ultras and the criminals, visibility was a liability. Arrest, court and conviction. The cocaine plot unravelled after law enforcement intercepted communications and shipments linked to Stevenson's network. In October 2024, Lloyd Cross stood in the dock at the High Court in Glasgow, admitting his role in the international trafficking conspiracy. Despite the seriousness of the charges, Cross arrived at court in a luxury vehicle, reinforcing the image of a man who wanted to be seen, even at his lowest point. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Alongside him was Jamie "Iceman" Stevenson, the kingpin Cross had served as lieutenant. The case confirmed what police had long suspected. Lloyd Cross was not a peripheral player, he was central. Loyalty, backlash and embarrassment. Even after his conviction, Cross remained a divisive figure within the Rangers ultras scene. During a Europa League match, Union Bears members unfurled banners reading "No Surrender LC", alongside references to the Rangers riot crew. Fireworks were launched, flares filled the Ibrox, the match was halted. The backlash was swift. Critics accused the group of glorifying a convicted drug trafficker. Some Rangers fans were furious that the club risked UEFA sanctions over a show of loyalty to a criminal. Others distanced themselves entirely. Ironically, Cross was also disliked by sections of the Union Bears for allegedly leaking a tifo design to Celtic's Green Brigade, a cardinal sin in ultraculture. Once celebrated, he became isolated. A cautionary tale. Lloyd Cross's story is a textbook example of how football firm culture and organised crime intersect and where they diverge. Football gave him identity, brotherhood, status. Organised crime gave him money, power and access to global networks. But the traits that served him on the terraces, visibility, bravado, the need to be seen, proved fatal in the criminal world. Today, Cross sits in prison. A former Union Bear, a convicted international cocaine trafficker, a man who climbed fast and fell just as quickly.
Chapter 3. Steve Bonzo Daniel. For Stephen Daniel, football was never just football. On the night his life almost ended, he'd been doing something entirely ordinary, watching Rangers play Aberdeen. A familiar routine, a familiar comfort. Hours later, that normality vanished. As Daniel drove home through Glasgow in the early hours, he noticed headlights behind him, then another car, then another. What followed was one of the most brutal and sustained attacks the city had seen in years. The chase. The pursuit lasted miles, 3 vehicles, speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour, empty roads, total intent. Daniel, driving his Skoda Octavia, realised he wasn't being followed for intimidation. This was an execution attempt. He floored the accelerator, weaving through the city, desperately trying to lose the cars tailing him, an Audi S3 and a Volkswagen Golf. Near Port Dundas, close to the M8, his escape ran out. The vehicles boxed him in. What happened next was savage. The attack. Daniel was dragged from his car and attacked with cleavers and hammers. Blows rained down on his face and head. His nose was almost severed. His injuries were so catastrophic, police initially believed he'd been shot at close range. Blood pooled on the road. Daniel was left for dead. He survived only because the attack happened within minutes of Glasgow Royal Infirmary, and because a top trauma surgeon was on duty that night. Doctors later said that had the assault had taken place even a short distance further away, Daniel would almost certainly have died. The attackers fled. The Audi S3 was later found dumped and set on fire in an attempt to destroy evidence. But they made a mistake. The bloodied machete was left on the back seat. Mockery and message. Detectives later recovered WhatsApp messages sent by those involved in the attack. They weren't cautious. They weren't remorseful. They were celebratory. One message read, "You happy the day then, mate?" The reply, "Love it, mate. Heard he can't see." Another followed, "Yas, mate." Images were shared of the cleaver believed to have been used, sitting casually on the back seat of the torched Audi. This wasn't just an attempted murder. It was a message. The Daniel clan. Stephen Bonzo Daniel is not a street-level gangster. He's the head of the Daniel crime family, one of Glasgow's most feared and deeply entrenched criminal clans. The Daniels have operated for decades, their power base rooted in areas like Postle Park, Milton and Bishop Briggs. When his uncle Jamie Daniel died of cancer in 2016, Stephen stepped into the leadership role. His mother, Annette Daniel, has frequently been described in the press as a crime queen, underscoring just how embedded the family is in organised crime. Bonzo's leadership coincided with escalating violence, not because he was reckless, but because he was now the symbolic head of the clan. In Underworld terms, that made him a target. The Lions feud, a war without end. For more than 25 years, the Daniel family has been locked in a bitter feud with the Lions crime family. This rivalry has claimed multiple lives, stretched across borders, and survived generations. Shootings, firebombings, assassinations.
The attempted murder of Bonzo was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 5 similar attacks over a 6-month period, each one escalating in brutality. After the 2017 attack, several Lions associates were convicted of conspiring to murder Daniel and others. Yet the violence never stopped. It simply evolved. Football, identity, and visibility. Despite his status in the underworld, Bonzo Daniel has always remained openly Rangers daft. He's been spotted repeatedly at Ibrox, even during periods when intelligence suggested his life was under imminent threat. In the underworld, visibility is dangerous. In football culture, it's identity. For Daniel, the two are inseparable. Underworld sources say his presence at Rangers has repeatedly exposed his movements, allowing rivals to track him, yet he continues to attend. Football is one of the few places where Bonzo is not a crime boss. He's just another fan. Firebombs, bounties, and Dubai. In early 2025, the violence intensified again. Bonzo's home in Bishopbriggs was firebombed. Weeks later, his sister Kelly, Bo Green's home, was also attacked. Around the same time, sources revealed a £100,000 bounty had been placed on Bonzo's head by a Dubai-based crime boss, widely believed to be Ross McGill, operating through Tamo Junto, TMJ. TMJ foot soldiers were said to be tracking Daniel's every movement. Bonzo fled briefly to the Middle East, but unlike others, he couldn't stay away. Family, territory, business interests. He returned to Glasgow. A man under siege. Today, Bonzo Daniel lives under constant threat. Underworld sources describe a man who, as a panic room inside his home, installed spiel bollards after a vehicle was rammed into the property, enters and exits through his garage only, rarely follows the same routine twice. TMJ enforcers are described as faceless and fearless, watching and waiting for an opportunity. At one point, sources claimed an attack at Ibrox itself was considered before being ruled out due to the sheer police presence. Nothing is off the table. Still standing. Scotland's ongoing gang war has led to over 60 arrests, long prison sentences for machete attacks and firearms offences, international manhunts and extraditions. Yet Stephen Bonzo Daniel remains alive, scarred, hunted, still standing. He's a living reminder of where this road leads. A Rangers supporter, a clan leader, a survivor of one of Glasgow's most vicious attempted murders. And as long as the feud continues, as long as football loyalty, reputation and underworld power remain intertwined, men like Bonzo will remain both symbols and targets. By now, the pattern should be impossible to ignore. Ross McGill, Lloyd Cross, Stephen Bonzo Daniel. Different backgrounds, different paths, but the same foundations. All three learnt their first lessons in loyalty, leadership and confrontation through football culture. All three carried those lessons into the underworld, with devastating consequences. This video wasn't made to glorify anyone. There are no winners here. What you've seen is the end result. Prison cells, scars that never fade, families living under threat, and communities caught in the crossfire of wars they never chose. Football firms once existed to fight rival fans. Now the violence has moved far beyond match days. And the most dangerous part, the next generation is already watching. If you've stayed with us until the end, you now understand something most headlines never explain. Our identity becomes power, our loyalty becomes control, and our chant on the terraces can echo all the way into the underworld. This has been a collaboration between Everything Casual and Underworld UK. If you value factual, no-nonsense storytelling, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let us know what story should be told next. Because some worlds were never meant to collide, but once they do, there's no going back.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you subscribe, You will be notified when we release a new video. It could be your firm we make a video about next, so don't miss out and hit the subscribe button. You can find me on Facebook or email me if you have a good story to tell. See you next time.